So what were some of the waypoints for you along the way? Like, were you doing this mainly alone? Like, just basically, did you have any coaching along the way, or were you just following this stuff online?
The first year to year and a half, I had no coaching, and that was a big, big mistake because I took way longer to get the skill than I should have because I was making the same mistakes over and over again. And I remember, in fact, the first time I took coaching, my coach looked at me and he's like, you're getting some results because you've just gutted through a year and a half, but you should be way better. And you're not because you're making the same mistakes over and over, and you're in a rut now because they're bad habits. And now you're going to have to spend another 9 months unlearning those bad habits before you learn new ones. So it was definitely a mistake. But in terms of the major turning points, I think the first one was when I really got over or at least I really made up my mind after so many nights of just standing there, being afraid to approach and beating myself up afterward. I think one of the big turning points is when I made up my mind, and it has to be your own thing. It's got to be, you just make up your mind, I'm just going to approach. I'm just going to approach, and I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to be okay with the rejection or them not wanting to talk to me. I'm just going to hammer it out, and I'm going to hit 10, 20 different approaches per night. And that was when things started to actually happen. I guess it's like if you go to the gym and you just stand around versus actually lift. Even if you don't lift all that well, you're gonna actually start to see progress at that point because you just manned up and you did it, or maybe you just went to the gym instead of watching the DVDs. And that was my first big thing. And I think after that, it was when I had the ability to what we call plow, which is just talk endlessly. Just talk about nothing and not care, even if they don't want to talk to you. Just keep talking. And really, it's such an important skill to have, to just talk nonstop and just plow forward.
Yeah.
And it's painful because you want to leave, but you just keep going, and that's an invaluable skill to be able to cultivate.
So how did you reach the turning point on that skill? Like, what did you do to get there for that one?
I gave myself a rule that I wasn't allowed to leave.
Yes,
so if I was freezing up and didn't know what to say, I would just have to stand there. I would just stand there and be silent and make it really awkward. And a lot of times girls won't walk away right away. They'll just stand there and make it awkward for you. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that the brain operates the exact same way the muscles do, the body does, in the sense that if your muscles are pushed past their limits, you're sore. You're sore and your muscles get bigger and they get stronger to adapt to the stimulus. But if you never push your muscles, if you just let's say you're doing curls, and the moment it becomes a little difficult, you just give up. Your body's really smart, and your body says, I'm not going to build more muscles to consume more calories and do all this work if I know you're just going to quit when it gets hard.
Yeah.
Well, your mind does exactly the same thing. If it knows you're just going to leave and bail as soon as it gets uncomfortable, then your mind never learns the ability to just talk and just plow conversation, because your mind's like, in the back of your head, it's like, oh, you're just going to leave. You're just going to give up and leave. But if you sit there and just make it awkward, your mind, it's kind of like negative reinforcement. Your mind's like, okay, this is getting really awkward. He's not leaving. I better come up with something.
Yes.
And gradually you start to adapt to that.
Yes. Man, that's awesome. I actually have that for beginners, like especially the ones who, because they have an escape plan. A lot of the Singaporean local guys, they're, as soon as there's a little bit of emotional discomfort. Now, I'm not even talking about pain, just discomfort. They just take off. Like, oh, I waited half a second, she didn't respond, so I'm going to preserve my ego, my strength, just like throwing him into the group, right? And then when we get there, and he turns around, and I got my arms around him because I'm forcing him not to leave. He's shaking, like visibly shaking in his shoes. And it was so ironic because there's this gigantic guy, and he's afraid of what these three little girls are going to say to him. But they saw me push him, so they kind of already thought, okay, these guys are going to pick us up. So they just ignored us for a while, and I said, he's like, they're not looking at us. I'm like, don't worry about it, just stand here. And we just stood there smiling, waiting for them to, just like standing there. And there's another guy, too, who came along his wing, and I just grabbed him, and I had him on my other arm. So there's three dudes, and I'm holding them still with my arms around their shoulders. And he's like, he really was sweating. Like, the guy was sweating like he was working out. I'm like, okay. And he was breathing really fast, too, like that. And I was like, dude, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like now, because this is like when you're at the gym and you need to rip muscle. It's going to hurt. That's when you got to keep lifting. That's when you keep at it. Push out another 2 or 3 reps. This is where it is. And I think that's the trigger that that set it off in his brain, because after that, not right then, because he couldn't understand it because he was just freaking out.
Right.
But eventually they looked at us, and then one of the girls was like, "I think these guys want to talk to you." One of the girls, right? And they're like, "No,
Right.
I don't know." It's like, and I said, "Yeah, we want to talk to you. We do, real bad." And then they looked up and they started laughing, and then it was all good. But it was just the fact that this guy could. I mean, one of the things that it made me interested when you were saying at the earlier part, when you were saying that you had all this martial arts training, you're like a mixed martial arts fighting warrior by the time you finish high school. But then this girl like ran from you when you were a child, like a kid, and you couldn't do anything about it in terms of using the fighting skills that you've learned. Like that discipline, the physical discipline, didn't give you an advantage. But actually, I think like just in terms of the mental discipline that comes from disciplining your body is the same sort of discipline that you need when it comes to training your emotions and reacting to women, like interacting with them. That it's really now you have this weak emotional side, and your willpower is weak in this area, and using the same skills of sticking at it and going through the pain and working through the pain. I mean, is going to put you in good stead when you're trying to learn this uncomfortable skill.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's one of the few advantages I brought into learning dating is that, okay, I'm short, I'm Asian, I'm introverted, like I have everything working against me. But the one thing I brought to the table was that discipline because, I went from martial arts to wrestling, and there's a lot of discipline in wrestling as well, and then to the Marines after that. So everything that I've done is an all or nothing type thing. In fact, even to this day, when I train physically to this day, I train all or nothing. I train either not at all and I'm lazy, or I go at it and I kill myself. Like I'm on the ground for like an hour trying to recover.
I love it. If I get a client who says anything remotely like that, I know this is going to be relatively easier for me. Like one of the greatest things, one of the best clients I like are the military guys, like me, like you've mentioned. I've worked with Navy SEALs. I've worked with Marines, and I've worked with guys who are actually stationed in Iraq, and then they just flew in for like I forget what the term is, but they were not active at that point. They just flew into Thailand. We did some training there, and what was really cool about like my dad was a military guy too in Taiwan, and he kind of raised me that way. Like if I was slouching, he'd slap me. And like, stand up straight. Like all through my childhood, and that was horrible. I had like no core strength at all growing up, so my back was always slouched, but I kept getting slapped. But one of the great things is that in Singapore they have mandatory military service. I think it's 2 years. So all of the guys have like fired machine guns, thrown grenades, and had to crawl through the ground in the jungle and stuff like that. And just trying to get them to. Most of them, when they come out of it, just want to forget the whole thing, But it's like traumatized. But I try to get them to dig in there because some of these guys, that's the only time in their lives when they've had to get through adversity. And it's really just this mental thing. Because what is this little girl? What can a girl do to you? Really, like she can't physically leave any marks on your body. Well, probably not, right? And even then, compared to what you've already gone through, it's not a big deal. And having that fighting spirit is a big thing to be able to tap into. Because once that guy, the big bodybuilder, got it, like just last month, every girl he talked to was making out with her. It was kind of gross because my girlfriend was there. She's a female dating coach. And she's like, he's really horny tonight. And he talked to one girl, make out with her, and she'd get pulled away by her friends. He'd be like, well, come over, have a drink. He starts talking to another girl, starts making out with her like literally 10 minutes apart. And has another one. It's like, dude, you got to go wash your mouth now.